Yo, it's sad to report that we're in a day and time where the restaurants are not even safe. Like where you feed yourself and your family are not even safe. This is crazy to me. Check this out, man.
Outdoor diners, beware. This surveillance video shows what's starting to look like a pattern of armed robberies at outside restaurants. Police are trying to figure out whether the holdups are connected.
So a new disturbing trend in New York's ever-evolving sea of crime has emerged. And even though police have no leads since the crooks targeting these restaurants all escaped on mopeds, this is the type of crime that happens so quickly and is so easy to pull off that experts say it's only going to get worse.
The thieves are demanding watches, wallets, and cell phones.
The video we're talking about shows men moving around a dining table and scaring people.
Investigators say one of them had a gun, another had a knife. Police say they got away with $200 in cash from the register and 5 iPhones from customers.
They're using crimes of opportunity where they're just basically grabbing purses or handbags off chairs and running out.
Surveillance video shows a man toting a gun. He's demanding customers here to hand over their watches and wallets. Detectives are...
Bro, just yesterday, we had family members come up to our house. They were in town for a wedding. What do? Hey, man, let's go sit down and have a meal together, sit, talk, conversate, laugh, joke, and have a good time. When we get to the restaurant, what do? We want to sit outside. It's a nice day outside. We want to sit outside. I don't want to sit inside. We could have ate at home if we wanted to do that. We wanted to sit outside. You can't even do that these days in fear of somebody running up on you.
We're now looking into whether or not the same men robbed customers at Carbone in Lower Manhattan.
Is there one thing in particular that you think is leading to this?
Well, it's a lot of things. It's a lot of the laws that have been passed that have basically tied the hands of the police.
Officers are now required to record the race, age, and gender of anyone they approach.
It slows officers down from going to a scene immediately.
Overall robberies are up 5% citywide compared to the same time frame last June.
If you go out to eat in this city, your waiter might be replaced with a robber. Now, the police say they're not sure if these incidents are related, but what nobody's talking about is that all of these incidents are related to the fact that this city does not punish crime. And here, if you steal under $1,000 worth of stuff from any store in town, you'll suffer no consequences because that's a misdemeanor, which has created a huge problem because for the last year, stores like Macy's have been getting robbed regularly, which is why everything inside is now chained to the store itself. And what this means is thieves need easier targets to steal from. And our money-hungry crooks, they're not looking at stores anymore. Oh no, now they're setting their sights upon the rest of us as we chow down on bagels in the middle of the West Village. Because our phones, wallets, and handbags make us walking dollar signs to these thieves, who might even be lurking among us as if they're just regular people. Not just at restaurants, but also at the grocery store or even on the subway, which itself is no stranger to violence and crime, and now looks more like a military occupation zone because of the high levels of police doing bag checks and the presence of the National Guard. Which brings us to the real reason why we've now got a crime wave above ground targeting restaurants just like this. There simply aren't enough police to keep us all safe at once. In fact, New York...
I was just sitting here thinking that. I'm thinking to myself, you got them in the subway. The police are spread thin. Spread thin. And if you don't think the crooks and criminals know that, they know that. These dudes are they're smart. They're paying attention. They know that. Okay, most of the police and everything, the protectors are over here. They're all over here at the subway. Most of them are. They're over there dealing with that. It'll take them a while to get to me. I got plenty of time is what they're thinking. Like, oh, bro, like this is why people don't want to come out the house no more. Look what you have to deal with.
New York City right now has as many police as it did back in the 90s, but the population of the city has grown by over 1 million people since then, which is a recipe for perpetual crime. Because when all the crime underground started, every available resource was sent down there to stop it, leaving all of us up here utterly defenseless, easy pickings for criminals who can steal everything we have in seconds. So here we are at Carbone, a famous restaurant in New York's West Village where thugs recently targeted its patrons who were eating outside. Now this place has a high-end reputation. It was started in 2013. Celebrities eat here, and a USDA prime porterhouse for $2.
And I feel like, and I don't want to blame like the rappers, but a lot of the rappers like started talking about this place, and I think kind of, you know what I mean? In my mind, I feel like that attributed to it becoming a target because they know, okay, celebrities are rapping about this place, so they're gonna be there. So we know we can hit this spot right here. Like, soon as they start making places hot like that, it becomes a target to me in my eyes.
Will set you back almost $300. And that's what makes this place an attractive destination for criminals, because they know everyone eating here can afford the food and is probably also dressed to impress.
The video we're talking about shows men moving around a dining table outside, and apparently they're demanding cash, they're demanding wallets. Detectives are now looking into whether or not the same men robbed customers at Carbone in Lower Manhattan, allegedly stealing a $100,000 watch. Police believe this could...
So this span of robberies has happened over the last couple of weeks. And before we get into the details of how these criminals operate, as well as the testimony from terrified patrons of all of these places, it's important to understand the one thing in common they all have. First, these are popular places to eat. In fact, so many people want to eat at them that not everybody can fit inside the restaurant. That's why you have these massive outdoor dining sheds like the one behind me that is pretty much a restaurant in and of itself. Look, it's got air conditioners and stuff in it, tables inside. The bagel shop down the street has people sitting outside. But the issue is, here you are all by yourself on a public sidewalk in the middle of New York City with no police anywhere in sight. And these restaurants and businesses, they don't have security guards. No, it's just you get your food and you can eat outside if you want to, and that's on you. And this is a safe neighborhood, so it's kind of alarming that incidents like this are taking place here. But once you understand why these criminals are picking these places out specifically, it'll all make sense. Especially when you realize that people eating out in New York City as a big group are utterly distracted and not really thinking about personal safety. But there's a much more frightening reason why criminals are looking to target people specifically on the streets.
Robbery is not on the menu here at Marlowe & Sons in Williamsburg, but that's exactly what some outdoor diners got. You can see the customers give up their belongings before the gunman takes off on a scooter. When we show...
So New York City has a massive moped problem right now, and the thieves, a team of 2, were riding one of these mopeds, which is how they were able to escape so quickly. Now the drivers will wait in the street with the engine running just steps away from where people are sitting, and then the passenger gets off. And in the video that we're looking at here, the passenger was the one who had the weapon and who went around to each person at that table and asked for their valuables and then got back on the moped and escaped. Now,
I don't put that much stock in that. Mopeds could be a thing as a reason, but we've all seen incidences, whether it be on the news or whatever, where a fool could have hopped out of a car and somebody been sitting in the driver's side waiting on him to come back while he go do his thing and come right back. Like, you know what I mean? And I guess in New York, where you got to keep moving, them jokers will circle the block. They'll circle the block if they can't sit still or be double parked somewhere because traffic is constantly flowing. They'll circle the block and keep circling the block until he ready. He come, hop back in the car, and then they take off. You've seen it so many times. So the moped thing, it could be a thing, but bro, that's happening regardless.
Observers say restaurant crime has a lot in common with the other types of moped crime we're witnessing, where thugs quickly approach unsuspecting New Yorkers as they're walking down the sidewalk, take a valuable, and then ride off into the night. But you see, that type of crime, it's a crime of opportunity because you have to be on your bike, riding past somebody who looks like someone that you would want to target. But at a restaurant, there's a whole bunch of people sitting outside with their guard down. It's perfect for criminals in a city that's not willing to protect its residents. On top of that, people at a restaurant, they're sitting down, they're on their phone, they can't get up, they can't run away, and they're dressed well most of the time. And no one at any of these places is looking for trouble. And what's sickening about all this is it is the logical progression of unchecked robberies that happen on the street. Now, restaurants aren't even safe places, which is exactly what witnesses of these events are saying on Reddit. This discussion covers all the recent restaurant robberies, and one user writes that it all happened so fast, most people weren't even sure what was happening. On top of that, all of these crimes occurred during dining hours between 6:30 p.m. and 9:30 p.m. in the evening, which means this this crime is different from purse snatchings that happen on sidewalks. These were premeditated attacks, specifically targeting the patrons of expensive, pricey restaurants in expensive, pricey parts of town. The criminals knew what type of customers they were going to encounter in places like this, which is sadly the very reason these places were pre-selected targets. But just as crimes in places like this look like an escalation over previous types of street-related crime, there's a new escalation that has now started happening with the whole restaurant scene, and it's not happening on the street.
The most recent incident happened here at Birds of a Feather about a week ago. This time, two men held up customers dining inside of the restaurant. The men stole cell phones and a watch. Sources tell Pix 11 News.
Look at that. The most recent incident did not happen at a sidewalk seating arrangement. No, it happened inside the restaurant. The thieves just walked in the front door and walked out with everyone's stuff, which totally makes sense. If you're a criminal and you get away with minor crimes, you're just going to graduate to bigger and better heists. And the videos we're seeing all show the criminals targeting men who have expensive watches. And if you're a thief and you can get your hands on a watch, that's something very small, very pocketable, and very expensive that you can easily resell. Because in this city, we've got as many jewelry exchanges as we have restaurants, and finding a place where you could pawn that thing off won't be a problem. But there's another element to this new pattern of crime that is extremely alarming and makes it something that it's very hard to defend against. Because let's say you're eating over here at this restaurant, or let's say you're inside a nice restaurant. How hard is it to spot someone coming into the restaurant wearing a motorcycle helmet to pick up a delivery order? That is like the most common thing. So these thieves, they can get very close to their intended victims. They can hide in plain sight, blending in with normal restaurant traffic. They're not.
Now that is something that you don't see often around where I live, but yeah, that could be something because you're so accustomed to see it that you don't think twice about it. People are walking around with bike helmets on, and you don't think this person is doing it to disguise their face, so they can get up on you pretty quickly. Listen, man, we've got to stop with the and I'm bad about it because I've wanted one, but I haven't bought one. You know what I mean? You don't see me with the jewelry. Go back through my videos. You don't see me with big flashy, big Cuban link chains on. You don't see me with Rolex watches and different things on, although I've wanted a Rolex before. But you don't see me out rocking that type of stuff. You don't see me out flashy or nothing like that. That lends itself, it's not because of the robberies that have been taking place. That's just my personality. I'm just not a flashy type person. But we all know people who are extremely flashy and they wear that stuff out. Hundreds of $1,000 chains, watches, bracelets, $1 million watches. You've seen people with them on, bracelets and rings and it just accessorized up. Some people walk around with $250,000 worth of jewelry on. It's crazy, you know? And it's like some people do it because it makes them look a certain way to others and it makes them look like they got money. And then people who don't have it feel a certain type of way towards you and then you become a target. So we need to get away from that. I don't know how people will do that because it's a thing, especially in the entertainment world.
Not even patrons at the restaurant. They just show up with their motorcycle gear on like every other delivery driver and no one blinks. And this gives thieves who are riding an e-bike or a moped the opportunity to hide and bide their time until the exact moment presents itself for them to commit a crime. And even though most restaurants in town have security, how good are these cameras going to be when the thief is wearing a helmet and you can't see their face? And it's incredibly frightening to think that the next time you're having a meal anywhere in New York City, you could be being cased and spied on as you chow down. But there is something the city could do if it really wanted to take this issue seriously and really wanted to put a stop to it. But as you're about to see, the solution to all of this is so logical and so straightforward that it's never gonna happen in this city, and that's something that should not only disappoint all of us, but should frighten us, because we're all targets. Here we have ye old police department. This is the Greenwich precinct, which is responsible for protecting people who were at that restaurant Carbone over in the West Village, but it's about a 15-minute walk. And the sad truth is that New York City just doesn't have enough police to keep everyone safe at once, especially with crime waves taking place in multiple places across the city at the exact same time, which isn't the kind of thing that matters to anybody until the watch off your wrist is taken when you're out to dinner and you still have to pay the tab because the food ain't free.
We have a staffing crisis going on in the NYPD right now. We lost nearly 3,000 police officers last year to just retirements, police officers leaving the department. Also, we're losing an average of over 200 police officers a month. So by the time we get to that end,
that is absolutely crazy. 200 officers leave the police department every single month. And not only does the police department here have monumental tasks in front of it, this attitude of defunding the police is still with us today. And that's why the numbers in the department itself are declining, and they're declining at a rate that is so fast, we aren't able to replenish the department with new recruits. And to make matters worse, we're losing experienced veteran officers, which means not only is our police department shrinking at a time when New Yorkers need it most with all of these simultaneous crime waves going on, the experience of the department is decreasing, which some say means its effectiveness is also going to decrease.
So how do we do that? How do we get back to making becoming a police officer a thing, something that a kid and a teenager and somebody would dream to become when they grow up, when they graduate, when they get a job? They look at that as a career path. How do we get back to that point? Because I'll be honest, being a police officer doesn't seem like the type of job, if I was growing up, that I would want. It doesn't. All the time you see things, you see different ones, you see the bad ones, you're not shown the good ones. It's not being portrayed that online when you see police officers. You're not. So maybe figuring out a way to probably increase the pay, that's a start probably, and start showing the good, make it endearing, make people want to become a police officer. Let's show that, things that would make kids say, I want to be that again. I want to be that. How do we do that? What are some suggestions? Put them in the comment section.
Precincts across this city where we would normally turn out 6 to 8 patrol cars, right now we're turning out 2 to 3 patrol cars in those communities on a given tour.
So what does that do to the safety of the community?
The response times continue to rise. That is the reality of policing right now.
So some precincts are down from 8 patrol cars to just 2. That's a 75% reduction in available patrols.
And if you think that response time ain't a thing, bro, it is. It is. We had a situation probably a couple months back, and Queen had to call the police for something, and it was an hour wait. An hour wait before officers showed up. Hour.
How is that not a recipe for more crime in pretty much every area of town? Less police means response times are going to go through the roof, because as crime becomes more common, police are now stuck choosing which incidents to respond to first, meaning your watch getting stolen at a pricey restaurant might come in behind something much more serious. And what's incredibly frightening about this is that our criminals, they're not defunding themselves. No, they're expanding their operations in light of the lax security that happens whenever the police divert resources from one crime wave to try and deal with another. And what makes this even more frightening is the proliferation of weapons. So not only are the thieves becoming more numerous and more emboldened, they're also becoming more heavily armed week by week. And you know how they're smuggling the guns into shelters? They're using delivery bags like this one right here. Apparently the shelters have metal detectors, but they're not actually scanning to see what's coming in the food packages. Does that mean there's a direct connection between all of this crime and the asylum crisis? Well, no, not necessarily, but it does mean there's a direct connection between the apparati that are supposed to keep us safe falling apart and increased crime. And the reason this disaster is unfolding upon us is not only because the police are shorthanded, it's also because our laws force them to fight crime with one hand tied behind their backs. And the latest example of all this is the How Many Stops Act, which is now in effect in New York.
Officers are now required to record the race, age, and gender of anyone they approach.
It slows officers down from going to a scene immediately. But the other side of it is...
Okay, now critics say that this is essentially a paperwork requirement that slows down law enforcement when we need more law enforcement faster, not less law enforcement slower. But proponents say having police record this information is important to make sure that law enforcement is happening in a fair manner for everyone. Now, whether or not you think this policy is a good idea is besides the point, because in a city with a short-handed police department, you've got to pick and choose what things you have your limited resources do. And the more time police spend using apps on their phones, the less time time they have to stop crime. And as we just heard, many departments are shorthanded right now, and if they've only got 2 patrol cars on the street and one of those patrol cars is busy filling out apps on their phone, there won't be enough cops to keep people safe.
Former NYPD Lieutenant Darren Porcher is concerned about delayed response time and the data itself. We reached out to the NYPD for a response. A spokesperson says the department has put in place policies, training, and technology to comply with the law. Officers will be using forms on...
Now, of course, this is just one example of a law that might hamstring police in the event of an emergency. But the thing that's crazy about this is all information, all of this demographic information, it would all be available in the event of an arrest. This applies to people who the police stop in a normal interaction. For example, if the police come out of the bomb squad department over here and they want to talk to me and it's an official stop, they're going to have to put my information to the best of their ability into this new system, which will be publicly available, apparently. But then the question becomes, if I'm not arrested for anything and there's no suspicion of guilt and I haven't committed a crime, what is the ultimate value of that? And there are fears that activists will use that information to further scrutinize our short-staffed NYPD, which could lead to more investigations that lead to nowhere and more oversight that is unwarranted in a time of increasing crime.
I also worry that there's just a general mentality, a lack of appreciation for police officers.
Well, I think the communities really support the police. It's the politicians that are enacting these laws that tie the hands of the police and put the public and the communities in harm's way.
And you don't see this.
So ultimately, there's nothing wrong with the system that increases the transparency at which a public institution like the NYPD does its job. That's a good thing. It will help keep the city safe. But the problem is the resources to do it aren't included with the plan that says it needs to get done. And right now, the police resources that we have are stretched so thin that the moment there's a crime wave in one part of the city, it pulls the resources over here. And then another crime wave pops up over here because the criminals saw an opening. Do you see what's happening? The police are playing whack-a-mole with our crime waves. That's why they're impossible to stamp out. That's why we went from having a crime wave in the subway below where I'm standing to a crime wave up here at our restaurants. And you know what? Once they get rid of this, then crime is going to go right back into the subway. That's exactly what's going to happen. Now, are the police perfect? No, they're not. Do they always do their job fairly? No, but they are the protection that the law-abiding have when we're at a restaurant between us and the criminals who want to ride up on the street on a moped with a weapon and try to take our belongings and possibly harm us. And that's very frightening. It's very frightening to think that we don't have the backs of the people who are supposed to have our backs. What kind of system is that? Of course it's going to be dysfunctional. Of course it's going to lead to crime waves. Is that what's happening? Is that why we've got crime in the city? Let me know. How would you fund the police in New York? Or are they funded too heavily? Should we restrict their funding? Let me know what you think.
This week, an explosive device is found in a car in East Harlem. Plus, a pair of shootings within a few blocks and just minutes apart leave 2 men dead. And
I'm gonna be a ugly duckling for a while.
A woman has to defend herself from a random attack. Right now, Fox 5's Crime in the City. Here are the crimes across the 5 boroughs. We begin in Bensonhurst, Brooklyn, where a man has been arrested after 2 young kids and 2 women were stabbed to death inside a home Friday night.
A man is in custody tonight after 2 adults and 2 children were found stabbed to death in Brooklyn. Fox 5's Stephanie Bertini talked with people who heard the cries for help.
Detectives spent the day in Bensonhurst, Brooklyn, looking for evidence and talking to people who live in this building and in the area of Avenue P and West 8th Street. After the NYPD confirms 4 people, including 2 children, were found dead in an apartment.
I'm still a little shocked about this.
Juan Perez lives across from the building. The NYPD was called to 1590 West 8th Street just after 10:15 p.m. last night. The initial 911 call, according to police, was about an assault in progress.
I just saw all the cops pulling up last night and I heard somebody screaming, so I had a feeling that, something bad happened.
Police say a man arrived home to find his mother with multiple stab wounds to her neck. And after officers arrived, they found the bodies of that man's wife and children, also in the same apartment where they all lived together.
The father was screaming out here. The father found the family deceased.
A 24-year-old man has been taken into custody in connection to the incident. According to the NYPD, he's related to the family. The two female victims are his mother and his sister-in-law. The two children are his niece and nephew, and it was his brother who initially discovered something was terribly wrong.
You don't really hear about this every day, especially this close.
This is horrible.
As people from the area are reacting, questions remain. Detectives are working to find out exactly what happened. The victims are identified by police as 56-year-old Mavdiva Mavliuda, 27-year-old Maftuna Kakimova, 5-year-old Kamila Shavkatova, and 4-year-old Timur Shavkatova.
We now go to East Harlem, where police say a domestic dispute led to...
I mean, what do you even say to that, bro? Like, just hearing that just makes your stomach tie up in all sorts of knots and just so sad, man. So sad, bro. Like, kids, nobody deserves that. But you take it a step further and say, bro, the kids?
To a homemade, potentially viable improvised explosive device being discovered inside a car.
To East Harlem now, where police say a fight between two cousins led to a disturbing discovery. A homemade, potentially viable explosive device. All of this going down in front of a police precinct. That's where we find Fox 5's Linda Schmidt with the very latest. Linda?
Yeah, first of all, good evening to both of you. And it happened right here in East Harlem in front of the 25th precinct. Now, as you both were just saying, police telling us it was two cousins. They're both 50 years old. They got into a domestic dispute. The next thing you know, one of them is telling police officers in front of the precinct that they have a machete in the car, as well as an explosive device. The NYPD's bomb squad called in after a suspected explosive device, a pipe bomb, was found in a car on 119th Street at Park Avenue, right in front of the 25th precinct. Monica lives across the street.
When I came out, they told me I had to go back in the building.
If it functioned, it was able to function as designed. What we would say in my parlance is it was capable of causing death or serious physical injury to anyone in proximity and property damage.
The NYPD says it was shortly before noon when two cousins, both of them 50.
And the lady sitting on her porch just then, I'm looking at her like, man, this is why I be like, bro, do we really know who we live next to and what they're capable of? Like, as a kid, I used to hate the thought of living in the country with nobody around me, no houses around. But stuff like this makes me want to be like, you know what? Maybe that was just my young mind frame. Maybe that was my young thought process, and I didn't know any better. Maybe I need to live somewhere where there's nobody around me.
50 years old, were in this car driving past the police precinct when the driver told officers that his cousin hit him in the head with a machete inside the car. But that apparently was not the worst of it.
The victim indicated that inside the vehicle was an explosive device.
The bomb squad transporting the device to the NYPD's facility in Rodman's Neck in the Bronx to determine if it was a fully functioning pipe bomb. Police are searching the suspect's home to check for other possible devices. They say he appears to have mental health issues.
The person who was in possession of the device had potential emotional issues. That's what it looks like to us at this time. And we don't have any reason to believe that he was headed anywhere specifically. And because of some other information we have, he seems to be rambling on about incoherent ideas and paranoias and things like that.
Now, as of right now, both of those suspects remain here in custody at the 25 precinct. And as for whether or not that pipe bomb was actually a real pipe bomb, we still don't know at this point. Police are still doing their assessment of that in the Bronx.
Back in Brooklyn, a pair of shootings just minutes apart left two men dead and another injured.
Well, a pair of shootings in Brooklyn near a migrant shelter killed two men and left one man in critical condition.
Very serious situation. Good day's Briella Tomasetti is outside the shelter in Clinton Hill with the latest on this investigation, and it looks like these shootings are related, Briella.
Yeah, Dan and Tashani, good morning to both of you. Certainly a scary situation for anyone involved or anybody who witnessed this. According to the Brooklyn Reader, this migrant shelter adjacent to us opened back in April and has the capacity to house as many as 765 adult migrants. This morning, though, it is the focus of a shooting investigation and still very much an active crime scene. It appears that police are still questioning people in the area. They have evidence markers behind this crime scene tape, and the motive behind the deadly pair of shootings, well, that remains unclear at this point. 2 people are dead and another critically injured in a pair of shootings at a park and a migrant shelter in Brooklyn. The first happened just before 10:45 last night at Steuben Playground, located at the intersection of Flushing Avenue and Steuben Street. When cops arrived on scene, they found a man in his 30s who was shot in the chest. He was rushed to Methodist Hospital, where he died from his injuries. Gunfire rang out again less than 10 minutes later, only a few blocks away. According to police, the second shooting happened outside a migrant shelter on Ryerson Street. They say a man in his 40s was shot in the head and pronounced dead at the hospital. Another man in his 30s was shot multiple times in the body. Investigators tell us he's in stable condition. Police believe the 2 shootings are related. They had no immediate description of any suspects, but this video shows officers surrounding a man on the ground who appears to be injured. Investigators did say they're looking into whether a scooter-riding gunman was struck by a car while taking off near Taft Place and Park Avenue.
And this is an everyday thing. I get off the same time every night from work and walk through the same path, and it's like this from daytime to nighttime.
Carter, a security guard who...
Prisoners of our own homes. That's where we're not headed, because I think we're already there. At this point, if you have to go to your job, you want to go from your job from your home to your job, and from your job to your home. You don't want to go out with friends. You can't enjoy yourselves. Things can always turn bad. Even if something that wasn't even meant for you, you get caught up in it. Like, prisoners of your own home is where we are these days. And what's going to change it?
Who works in the area told reporters the playground where the initial shooting happened is littered with food, clothing, mattresses, single men, and families.
They don't got nowhere to really go. I don't know if the shelter's overpacked because everywhere is crowded out here.
According to the latest NYPD crime statistics, shooting incidents decreased in the 88th precinct year to date from 6 to 2. Shooting victims, on the other hand, went down from 7 to 3, not including these latest victims of gun violence. Now, law enforcement sources tell the New York Post that all of the victims, all 3, 2 that have died and the other who is critically injured, are migrants. No arrests have yet been made.